Lucky Boys Podcast.
So you think there's a strong correlation, something as simple as playing a video game that can give us clues about ourselves in terms of our risk appetite and our personalities?
100%. I think so. I think that, even one perfect example for me was my first experience snowboarding. So like my first experience snowboarding, I was learning, I had an instructor and I was learning how to snowboard. And I just remember going down this hill and whenever I felt like I was going too fast, I would stop. And the way I would stop is I would come to a complete stop and fall. Okay. And then I realized, wow, like I have to get back up. You know how hard it is to get back up on a snowboard, right?
When you're learning.
Especially.
Yeah. Those falls add up. It gets harder the next time.
Yeah. And like there's even these minor things I think about. It's like, for example, I even researched and bought like butt pads. I bought wrist guards,
we did the same.
and it's like, okay, like that's like you're risk averse. Like there's some people that show up to their first time learning and they're like, oh, like fuck wrist guards, like fuck butt pads. You don't need that shit. Like I'm just gonna wear my regular pants. I was like, oh no, like I need wrist guards. and then, but for me, one thing I really realized was, man, like I'm not going to get up and keep falling. And it's like my third fall down this mountain, I still nowhere close to getting to the end of the mountain. I was like, it's going to take me forever if I, just keep falling and then just stopping whenever I'm afraid of I'm going too fast or I feel like I'm going too fast. And, for me, I'm like, wow, like, you know what? My whole life, people have been like, yeah, you're so young. Like you have time and you're going to just take your time and like, take your time, like, and one thing I really realized when I was snowboarding was, you know what, like I'm the only person that can control the time and the speed or how fast I feel like I'm moving. Right. So it's like, I can either decide, hey, I'm going way too fast and just come to a complete stop, fall, try to build the momentum again, or I can learn how to carve that mountain, right? And like flow with the momentum and figure out, okay, like, hey, if I carve, then I'm going to, maybe slow down a little bit, but just to a point where it's manageable. And then I'm going to rebuild up
stay
momentum.
In control.
Yeah. So, I'll go from, let's say, taking 15 minutes to go down that mountain to taking that mountain in 2 minutes. Right. And that I think was a huge thing for me in terms of how I connected it to life and how I saw like what I was doing in terms of, am I stacking or just letting the momentum flow? Am I really just waiting when I'm like, whoa, I'm going too fast, right? And
it's slowing yourself down.
And I always think like, when we were talking off camera, it was like, hey, like the one, it's like your life in terms of whether it's like business or what you're doing in life experiences, all of it is interconnected. It's really like, that's still you doing something, right? So as your thought process is in everything. And I always kind of take that into account and I think about that. And then as I'm journaling or I'm sitting there and I'm thinking about it, I just come to realize, or sometimes even when I'm in the mountain, I'm like, wow, I just look up and I'm like, I just carved this mountain and it took me like 2-3 minutes versus 15 minutes of coming up and down, right? Falling up and down, coming up, trying again, and like feeling like I'm starting to sweat. I'm like, why am I sweating on this mountain? Yeah, so it definitely is a huge factor. So it's like when I think about like why go from uncertainty, why move towards uncertainty and versus comfort, or uncertainty maybe is associated to love then, because you're pushing yourself to grow, right? And I think like a huge factor to that is like, challenges or problems are supposed to happen in your life, and if you don't have problems, then you're, the only person that doesn't have a problem is, right, like you're dead. Like you have no problems after that. You're just a body.
You're just a body.
Yeah. So in terms of like problems being a sign of life, for me is just like, this is what's happening for me, and this is what's challenged me to grow. So if my problem is I'm at this fork in the road and this is what I'm debating between, whether it's two options or 3 options, I'm like, hey, like this is challenging me to grow. This is my time to step up. I'm not going to move into the comfort side, and there's times, of course, that everybody moves towards comfort, but you have to figure out, hey, like, is this where you want to move towards during this time? There's some times where maybe comfort is where you want to be at, and that's completely okay. But it's like those decisions, at least for me, was I'm it was like an uncertainty, but it was a faith that, hey, things are going to work. I know, like, the way that I play life is I want to win. And if I want to win and I know I'm going to win, just like how when I play games or anything else, or when I'm snowboarding, I'm like, I'm going to get to the end of the mountain. It doesn't matter if I'm falling up and down, right, as I go along the way, or if I'm carving, I just know I'm going to that end. So the plot's going to keep changing, but because I have the faith and I have all that certainty of, everything's going to work out, just stacked up through all these different experiences, I'm willing to jump in and take that chance, right? Like, I'm willing to know, like, jump off that plane and say, hey, like, the chute is going to open and success leaves clues, and all these people have done it before me. Why not me? You know?
Do you get that voice ever come in? Like, I could just be running and it was just like, it's like, don't run, stop running, go home, lay on a bed. Or if I wake up and I already have my whole day planned out, and I knew that I would have to invest a lot of energy to make that growth, that personal growth for the day, whether it's working on my physical prowess or reading or anything like that, that voice goes, why don't we just turn on Netflix? There's a new show on. And just, why don't we just kind of chill, have that nice cup of coffee and just kick our feet up?
Yeah.
How do you get away from that narrative? How do you not give that voice power?
I think there's kind of like a, I don't think like that voice necessarily is bad, actually. So I think like there's certain moments, right? Like where for me, like I've listened to the voice that's just been like, go, 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 go. So like for such a large period of my life already, even at 23, where that's like one of the reasons I've gotten to where I am. But now I've actually come to realize really recently that, like there are times that you just chill. And there is a kind of like it's kind of like a pillars of life in terms of what you want to focus on, right? And like, for example, like if I think about it, it might be like health, finance, friends and family, and it may be causes I support. So like if those are the pillars, then what they may not be at, like, if I were to grade them from like 1 to 10, they may not always be like all at a 10, right? But there's certain times where maybe those pillars are a little bit some of them are higher than others in numbers, right? And then maybe like finances maybe at an 8, and then like let's say friends and family is all of a sudden at a 4. So like then I take that time, like, hey, maybe I need to listen to the chill voice and just go spend time with family. Like, maybe I because I don't want my friends and family section to be at a 4, right? It's almost like you wouldn't go out with a 4. Why would you have this part of your life to be a 4, right? And you kind of blend it all up and figure out what parts you listen to. And so I think that's one of them for me when I think about how I make those decisions. There's another part too that I think that is more so I'm thinking of there's a sense of like every human needs to grow, right? Like there's a sense of almost everybody like that's a little bit different. Like one thing that really stuck out to me recently was somebody told me like, hey, like, if you look at a tiger, like a tiger just is happy that they're a tiger. They just sit there, they're growing, they're young, they're growing, and they're just in this jungle, and they're like, I'm a tiger, I just eat.
They don't question whether they're a tiger and if they can hunt or not. They just know it. Yeah.
They just know like that's them, right? And I think for us, like what's different about humans is like we're always questioning that. We're always like, growth, like we're seeking things, and I think that's a part of us that's like that we actively chase. So because of that, like that voice is so much stronger for me that I just I'm constantly exploring it, and I just look at those experiences as this is how I'm it's just part of the process, right? And that's like how I go about it.
Do you think that most of us just don't think enough?
So I think it's not necessarily that people don't think enough. I think every human thinks, in their head nonstop every day. I think everybody actually has a lot of thoughts, right? But it's I think maybe there's a portion of it sometimes that we don't always ask each other to ask ourselves the right questions. And I think also some people have programming in their heads from, let's say, early childhood or just them growing up and those life experiences where it's stacked, and maybe it's stacked in a different way. So, you know, some and I think everybody has the potential within them. It's just that some people have taken different meanings for different things that have happened, right? Like I could have taken plenty of different meanings for what would happen in for skydiving, you know, and maybe that meaning would have had a different outcome for me. Maybe I could have freaked out so much that I passed out in the air. Who knows? So I think that the maybe the meaning for me would have led me to never have gone skydiving, you know, or snowboarding. And so I think that the meaning that you attach to things and the identity of the people attached to themselves is really important in that process, right? So some people may not have that strong association to that thought process of or ask themselves those questions, or they may ask themselves slightly different questions that maybe like for example, maybe they're asking like, hey, like, why is this happening to me, right? Instead of why is this happening for me? And that can lead to very different answers, right? Or and I think it can be trained, but it's almost like we're in a generation, especially in my generation, where I feel like, you know, we're in a generation where we have all this information available, but it's like we're all just listening to information, and a lot of that information is just noise, right? So like some people get caught up into that noise channel and they stop listening to themselves, and really in your inner voice is like, you know, some people is like that inner voice just gets lost, and it gets influenced by all this outside noise that tells them these.
How do you cut through all that bullshit?
I mean, I do look for outside voices as well, but I think I look for outside voices of people I want to role model after, right? Or like people that have done what I want to do, or have achieved something that I want to achieve, and I figure out what made them successful, and I look for those things. And not everybody is perfect or the way that I want to be, because I'm just myself, right? So I look for those different parts that I'm like, wow, this is what I can take away from this experience and this moment. And I find that in every day too. Like I find that in everybody that I meet, and it's not necessarily like I listen to everybody actually, but I just have different takeaways.
Now, with the fashion industry, the barrier to entry is tremendous. It can be so challenging to get in. Have you faced any issues or obstacles where the gatekeepers won't allow you in?
I think like the gatekeepers of fashion is like, it's a little different now with social media. It's like, you know, like if people like your stuff and you can put it out there and get it to enough people, you'll find out how quickly people want to support you, right? And so it's almost like every person has become a gatekeeper in themselves. You know, like I'm a gatekeeper myself, right? Like in information, if somebody tells me something and I don't want to apply it to myself, I'm gatekeeping that information out of me. It's like with social media, that's amplified to consumers, and it's amplified to like just each individual person. So there's definitely, you know, as there have been times where, let's say like stores, when we did the trade show, and I didn't know this, but the first season of trade shows, you know, buyers don't buy from you because they're just like, hey, like, will you be here next season, or the season after that? Are you going to be here to sustain? And I don't necessarily look at it as like they're gatekeepers. It's like, hey, like they're people running small businesses. These are boutiques that need to do payroll, do rent, you know, like figure out if, hey, like buying your stuff will make them money because they need to run this store, right? And there's a passion and love for everybody that's in fashion or any industry, but they have to, it's like they have to be aware of those things. And whenever they open up that gate, so to speak, they're like, hey, I'm willing to invest in you, right? I'm willing to invest in like buying wholesale from you because this is going to be make me money, and like we're gonna have this relationship together. And it's like even in following somebody on social media now, it's like that somebody's willing to invest their time to look at your photo or video, see what you're doing. And that's like, to me, I think that's super, it's like space in somebody's head, right? Like no dot is in your head rent free in a sense. Like,
so you don't feel like anything's owed to you. There's no sense of entitlement.
Yeah. I mean, I believe that the only thing you're owed is an opportunity. You know, I think that has always stuck out to me. And I think if you have the opportunity and you're alive on this planet, you know, and you have your body, then that is your opportunity. Like, you were born here, welcome to your opportunity, go after it. And I feel like there may be some people that feel like, hey, like they're entitled for something, but to me it just is confusing, because it's like, I mean, you were given this body, and you were given your brain and your heart and these lungs, right? And it's like, that's already super complicated. That alone is the biggest gift. You beat the odds in the sperm race.
Yeah.
You know, so any sense beyond that, man, like, you have to make whatever environment you're born into work, right? Like, and
play the hands you're dealt.
Play the hands you're dealt, but you can change the hands you're dealt, right? Like, I think yes, you're born into this environment, right? Like, I can be born into this this family, but it doesn't mean that I follow this blueprint, right? It doesn't mean I follow like exactly this family's idea of my blueprint. I can change that. I can change my own blueprint. That's so
myself. Important, what you just said.
Yeah.
That's so important, because most people feel like this, I'm beholden to this, and that's the way it is.
Yeah.
Wow. Especially being in an Asian household. I mean,
there's so many, you know, you're beholden to a lot of things in an Asian household. There's so many rules you have to follow. And there's a legacy you have to follow. And sometimes in this families, you know, especially immigrant families where they don't come from much. And they expect, you know, they expect some kind of, I don't want to say you know, just support from their kids.
Yeah.
You could say a lot of immigrant parents look at the kids like investments.
Yeah.
Like that's a 401k right there. Like, you know, that's
especially when you're the eldest.
That's
then
the retirement plan.
Then you have
I raise your ass, you do well, and when I get old, you better take care of me.
You're my 401k.
I mean, that's the retirement package. But the bigger point here is to be able to step away from that and say, that's not for me. Like, I'll do all that. That's fine. And I want to do that because, you know, you love them, they're your family, and they're very important to you. But I don't want to do it like that. That's the obstacle I think most people face. It's you set up a blueprint for me or a roadmap, but I don't want to go in that direction. I want to go over here. I want to go over here. I want to take care of you. I want to make you proud, but I want to go here. I want to do it my way. I don't want to do it your way. Your way is not for me. You know, it's my life. I need to live it. I think that's important. I think that's I know so many talented folks that I met in school and playing sports that didn't listen to their inner dialogue, that did what they thought would make other people happy, whether it's their significant other or their parents or just people that they're close with and they trust and they confide in. And as we've gotten older and matured enough, we revisited some of these conversations and fuck, man, they are just bummed out. I mean, hearing them talk, it's like talking about someone that has a jail sentence. You know, I was talking to somebody really close to me and he was telling me, he goes, hey man, you know, I mean, he has all the degrees in the freaking world. I mean, if you look at it, I mean, his resume looks, you know, that's not somebody that would have a challenging job getting hired in any company, right? But the thing is, he's not happy. He did all that and he got into a point where he's finally just fed up and said, look, I got to get out of this, man. It's killing me. It's killing me. I don't have time for myself. I don't have time for my family. And I'm severely depressed. What keeps me going is 3 cups of coffee a day and alcohol at night.
Yeah.
It's mind-blowing. His health is destroyed. And when he tells me, I was like, so how are you going to get out of it? He goes, in 10 years, I'll have enough to leave the rat race. In 10 years. So then in 10 years, he's going to be what, 50, 55, mid-50s?
Yeah.
So he's going to exchange the latter part of his prime or whatever's left of it just so that he can retire when he's 50, 55.
You know what? It's funny because, you know, to me, it's like if you go into like a stable job, you're trying to find balance. But it seems like he's just not finding that balance anymore.
A lot of us don't, though. How many of us negotiate this? We go, oh, it's only for this amount of time. And then I'll follow my dreams. We always say X amount of time and then I can do this. Well, I'll be curious at 50, 55 if he still, I'll be almost surprised if he actually did retire, if he may still be there and say, oh, maybe another 5 more years when I can get my 401k at 59 and a half, right? So we are constantly negotiating with ourselves and staying on that path just a little bit more, but sometimes in a way that doesn't service us, where we can be 80 years old on that rocking chair and be proud of what we did, instead of looking back at the prime of our lives and we gave it to a corporation that didn't really reciprocate that energy. I mean, if you're there's a lot of great companies out there, great corporations, and with amazing benefits, and they encourage a healthy lifestyle and balance. I'm not talking about those, but that's definitely not the norm. There's more that people get into and they're just not happy. It's a completely toxic environment, and it. The clues goes also the other way, where you wake up and you just hate your life. You're not excited about life. You wake up and you just want to go back into bed. You don't want to go into work. You don't want to be on that meeting. You don't want to do any of it. But you know that, hey, for the security, for the paycheck, for the health, and you make, starting off of college, you probably didn't think like that. But then 5 years in, 1 year in, now you're locked in and you're going, you know what? I can't quit now. I'm locked in. There's what else I'm going to do for a living? So you just write out whatever you have for the rest of your life. So in a sense, we kind of put ourselves in a cage mentally. We jail ourselves. And I'm telling you, I know so many intelligent people with a ton of personality, and I watch them slowly die inside and just turn into people who are finding ways on just how to survive. It's depressing.
How do you break from that? That's so crazy.
That's what I'm trying to figure out. Like, I think.
Well, I mean, I think
part of it.
I think we found our kind of way to break out of that monotony. But
it's also meeting others like that, like having a conversation, because a lot of us are afraid to have this dialogue because people may look down on us or they would ridicule us. Like, it's going, oh, well, I'm thinking about doing this. Oh, you're a dreamer. Oh, you're dumb. We get judged. Oh, I'm dropping out of school.
Your head's in the clouds.
Right. I'm dropping out of school to pursue XYZ. They go like, what? What? If you do anything the non-traditional route, and it's the closest people to you that'll doubt you and say these crazy things most of the time, and until it works. Then they're going to be like, I told you, that's my boy. And a lot of us, we move in that direction. We go, how would my circle feel about this?
You were focused on creating something, and creating something that probably a lot of people didn't understand. How did that affect your relationships?
So I think in the beginning, actually, I was so focused on just like trying to create this thing and start up this company and this baby in a sense, right? That it was like I disregarded relationships almost. Like it was like, man, like I barely saw my parents. I like. And honestly, like if that's like, I barely saw my parents, I barely like hung out, I didn't go out like to parties or anything like that. But I think like one thing really quickly before I like expand into it is the part about voices and like your peer group of people, right? Like the people that are like closest to you that end up sometimes telling you those things like no's, or like they don't believe it until later on. I think for me, like one thing I quickly found was like, man, I definitely had some friends that like the moment that I started that brand, they became early supporters, and then I definitely had people that are like, oh man, like this is, but I think there was two things about that. There was one thing that I realized for me on clothing that I think people maybe starting clothing brands and other companies might be interested in is like, your friends are not your target market. So like if they don't buy anything from you, like please don't be offended. and like if you're selling something, like maybe they're not your target market, like they're supporting you, they're rooting for you, but man, like don't count on them to buy from you, right? And that's something that actually took a little bit of time for me to really like configure in my head, right? And then I think the other thing is like, I was like, okay, well, I have to really fill myself with the support though. If it's not in this immediate circle of friends I have right now, it's not like I can't be friends with them, but I need that support right now within me. I need, and for me, that developed through social media. I actually met different photographers, people that were just willing to support and just like shoot my products, or I met models. I just started hanging out and surrounding myself with that support, right? Like filling my voice, like my head up with that support. And then I think I always like this, I keep going back to the stacking thing because I always stacked that voice in my head to get louder and more clear. And I just and I always visualized and stacked that so clearly. Like I just was I would always have those dots, and I would just maybe like, I think it was just something where the more people told me I couldn't do it, it actually helped me. Like the more like my mom's like, wow, like I can't believe you're selling $150, because we were selling $150 jeans in pre-order in the very beginning. It's like, wow, you're selling $150 jeans. Like, who's buying this?
Right.
Like that just
for them, it's mind blowing.
yeah. And then even now, you know, and it's like, and now like she's like shocked, and I'm even shocked. I'm like, you know what? Like, yeah, it's really beautiful. Like I'm like, wow, like somebody's buying this, and it just kept stacking in me, like in a different way, where I just had to find a different meaning every single time, where I was like, okay, like, is there, it's almost like a challenge, right? Like, hey, like, do you feel like I'm like, if you feel like my brand isn't like worth this price, then like, what can I do if you are in my target market to really make this happen, like to really show the value? Like is there something I'm not doing correctly? Like, what else can I do, right, to show that? And I think surrounding myself with that new voice, the new voices of people that do support and get behind it, was super important for me early on. And I think that, you know, one thing for sure I will say is like, hey, like if you're your parents are not always your best role models. Like when you find role models, like don't think like your parents is your exact role model, right? Like it's like they have their own lives, and you have to find role models of people that have done it and in what you're trying to do, or, you know, find role models of people that have X amount of success or something and figure out what they did. And and for me, my parents' level of success, honestly, I'm like, holy shit, you came so far. You know, my family's from Fuzhou, and I had the opportunity to go back there like last year, and I was just like, man, like you have come so far, like to
Is it still villages there, or is it like a city?
Yeah, so I went to my grandma's hometown, and it's like a village. You know, it's like pretty much like empty.
Village and farm and a lot of open land, or
no farms really now. It's like there's apartment buildings and condos now and stuff, but it's like I went back to the part where it's like a village. Like the apartment buildings are over here, and then there's like still a center village, right? And there's still like under construction and all this stuff, like tires being made in this random warehouse factory.
Right, that's what I hear. Like you drive 10 minutes and it's like, whoa, it's like, you see the old world, and then you drive another 10 minutes and you see a new world. I saw a bed
being made like in real time. I was like, that's crazy. And you know, and I was just like, you know what, like for where you like for your context of for you to be here in America, you've made it so far. Like you don't need to go any further. Like you're chilling. I completely respect it and understand it. And it gave me a new context to like, wow, like this is already to them the furthest level of dream, you know. So like the advice they give me sometimes is maybe not the noise, like the things I need to listen to. I need to listen to somebody that has that context of something even more than that. And I think that's like that's something that really early on I was just like, man, like I'm not going to listen to this. You know, this is something that I just knew was not for me to listen to. Like I cannot listen to this voice, because this voice just creates this doubt or this like this feeling that I'm not okay with in my and I need to turn to new voices, and I need to hear myself and my belief. So I actually separated from my parents like early and moved out in the beginning because of that. And in that process, I was like, wow.
You needed to change your environment and the energy, right?
Yeah.
In order to grow.
Yeah. I definitely think the environment of that, once I separated that out,
that's so key.
I started hearing myself more clearly.
I hear you 1000% on that. You know, there were times where I had to, even the people I love and I was near, and I had to divorce myself away from that. And it sounds like a bad word, but in order for me to grow, I needed to take a step aside into a different space that was way more scarier, right? Because now I'm alone. Before, over here, I have them. I have a cushion. I have my support group. But going over here, it's just me now, and I have to rebuild in a sense. But I knew that for what I wanted here, couldn't give it to me. Here couldn't understand it. Here couldn't support it. It was just it's not that they were negative or toxic, but it just wasn't there. What I needed wasn't there for me to flourish. So I had to go and find it on my own here. And I'm grateful I did. It's taking that leap that you were talking about. Like, you know what? This scares me. This uncertainty of jumping off this plane. But what an experience that was, right?
Leap of faith, yeah.
Yeah. Once that parachute opens, I mean, there's a holy shit moment. Like, yo, I'm gonna die, man. It's like and eventually, you know, when you get to look at the scenery, you're just like, oh man, this is so amazing. And when you survive it and you're back, you're back on Earth. You're going, holy crap. And whoever went with you, you're just like talking about it like, oh my gosh. And you guys are so hyped. Yeah. And it's just such an incredible experience. And I will relate that to life, where we're moving into things where we have to build from uncertainty. And when you start to use your phrase, stacking all of these things that are just proving to you that you can do it as a person, you're starting to see results, which adds to confidence. And then you get to meet other people in this lane and you go, whoa. If this dude's ahead of me and I feel like my stuff is doper, or I'm giving more energy, or I have a different perspective, I have a fresh take on it. If you made it there, I could probably do that too, or if not better. Yeah.
So I think like the stacking thing and surrounding yourself with new voices. The other thing that I think was really important too was not just surround yourself with new voices, but like these new voices gas me up unbelievably to the point where I believed in myself, you know, and in a sense, and I do this now, even to this day, to people where, and the friends around me, you know, where it's like, you have to have that belief. And if you cross people around you, you know, like I remember the first few people I would meet that really had that belief in me, and they're like, wow, like you're going to be a huge designer, you know, like I think that was something that those moments of belief, like I remember walking into a store at 18 and I didn't even know what a line sheet was, and this guy just placed an order on my products, you know, and I was like, man, like I need to get wholesale. And you know, to this day, I'm still friends with Joe. His name is Joe, and I'm still friends with him. And like, his belief in me, like it just so happened, it was the first order I got. I was like, wow, this guy never met me before. It's that easy? Wait, can I do this again?
There you go.
Right. And then, and so I think it's almost like having that trained as a muscle, right? Like having that trained in you. And if that's too hard, like, hey, like, and you feel like what I'm saying is too hard in a sense, is like, then you have to stack it in a way, like make it so easy. Like, okay, like what are you winning in? Like if you're listening to this and understanding this, you know English. Right. Like stack the fact that you know English as part of your basics. Confidence, right? Like the basic, foundation. Like, okay, like, you know, math.
And I was just gonna ask you that.
Yeah.
You make it sound a lot simpler than it is. You know, the jealousy, you know, I hear everyone talk about it. Anybody that's successful or anyone that tries to move towards anything that's usually against the grain, I hear their, you know, sounds or echoes of jealousy, or, you know, people sipping on that haterade, and it's their friends. How do you find friends that are opposite of that, where they're giving you that love and they're going, yo, you're fucking dope, you're gonna be the next big thing, and they're hyping you up and they're pushing you and they're supporting you? How do you do that?
I think they also have really big goals, or they have certain goals, and you know, like the support is mutual. So it's, you know, it's not like a one-sided thing. You know, I'm supporting them as well, and I think the other thing is I've actually come to realize that, like, hey, like it's a very human thing sometimes. Like, you know, people want what they're really doing when somebody kind of says something like, you know, like, oh, maybe you're not that good, is they're trying to actually bring you closer to themselves, right? Like they're trying to bring, like they're actually doing the same thing that I talk about when I'm like, oh, I want to bring my goal closer to me, but they're just doing it like
in a different way.
The other way.
Total opposite way.
Yeah. In a way that's not conducive to anyone. And it's actually killing their own happiness.
We talk about this all the time, the crab in the bucket mentality.
Yeah.
Is instead of like pulling the crab up to escape, instead they're pulling them down.
Yeah. So
just leaving the crab alone. Just let the crab do what it wants. Leave it alone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Stop nipping at me.
So for me, because I see it that way, I'm like, oh wow, you know what? We're not so different. You're doing the same thing. We're just doing it slightly differently.
Let's have a different approach.
So I don't feel like that sense of like I started feeling like that sense of understanding and then appreciating like everybody's human, like, oh, like this happens, and you know, they're not so far apart from my thought process. It's just maybe a slight tweak and they'll be in the same wavelength, but like I've come to accept that, and I've come to like in terms of finding that, I mean, I honestly feel like with like social media, you know, some people say like, oh, social media is so terrible and all of these things, but I'm like, man, like social media shows you what you want to see, right? So if you want to see people achieving and striving and doing their own thing, that's what your explore page looks like. If you want to see dogs and you know, pretty girls, like that's what your explore page will show you, right? Same thing with TikTok's For You page and so on. So I feel like as you're doing it, it's almost like the machine of social media and the algorithms that are built up is just working for you. It's just it's just happening. And so that's why maybe I think it sounds easier. Like I've met so many people that have just reached out like, oh, I've seen you on For You page or like explore page because of those things. I've met people randomly on the street or like in a party when parties are still a thing, you know, and I think like that's just from doing, right? Like the doing is almost like how you're growing and stacking the momentum, right? Like you're trying to stack and build momentum, and you're building, and as you do it, it kind of rolls bigger into a ball, and as it keeps rolling, right, that ball gets bigger. And then for me, like one really interesting concept that I had was I remember when I was first starting and trying to grow this momentum, man, I just remember feeling like I am a gravitational pull. Like I literally had moments where I told myself like, you know, like I am a gravitational pull for everything around me. Like if success was a gravitational pull, I am that gravitational pull. Like my body, myself is a planet. And I just remember certain moments where I would just feel that pull and things would happen. And it's like a foreign concept maybe, but that belief was so strong in me that like success or like this was going to happen and this will happen, that the store places the order and all these things. I'm meeting the photographers I need to meet. I'm meeting stylists, or I'm meeting writers. Like it's just happening for me.
I do feel like, yeah, I'm a force that anything I'm around, I can turn to gold, and I do make other people better around me. I make myself better, and I'm constantly moving towards that improvement. And I guess where I can land into some friction is, and this comes from my friends, where they're like, yo, you too positive, right? Yo, Will, you too positive. Like, no, that could never happen. Or yo, I'm not negative. I'm just being realistic, you know? Like, you think we could really achieve that? Or you think that's actually possible? I'm looking them dead in the face. I'm like, yeah, like, I'm not just saying it for fun. Like, I'm telling you how I feel and what I see.
Yeah.
My hands and my feet works. My brain works. Why not? Why not me?
But I think it's also really cool, right? Like when you were saying, you know, to see friends like that from a long time ago suddenly start seeing it, right? And I think that comes from, because for them, like it may have been really far away in your head, but you're willing to shoot your shot to get there. And for them, it was even further, maybe. Like they're like, holy fuck, like you are, like the moon is here and you're trying to go to Saturn, you know? And we've been to the moon, but we've never been to Saturn.
Right.
And so I think for that friend, right, once they start seeing it, they're like, wow, like you're getting there. And so I think so for me, sometimes like I'll kind of do it in a way where it's like I'll share where the moon is, and because the moon is reachable and it's something foreseeable in the immediate future. And for me, I think of it like, well, my dreams are for myself and my own fulfillment, right? It's not necessarily like it's not necessarily their dream. So if they don't believe in it, it's like it doesn't really affect me in terms of my larger overall dream. So it's completely irrelevant in terms of if they feel like I can't get there.
But is there a disappointment that lies between? like inside where you say, damn, I thought you were my friend. Like, how can you say that I can't succeed as a designer?
Or you just don't talk to them.
I don't
about
think
this
I
stuff.
I don't think I talk to people that actually tell me that. Or,
That's what
like
I'm
you
saying.
don't even bring up the conversation.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. So you remove yourself from people like that? Because a lot of people they don't and they do. I've met a mix.
Right. It's more like for me personally, I
Yeah.
wouldn't remove them entirely from my life. It's more like I would not speak to them about these things because they won't add anything to it. You know.
But it's kind of like what Alan was saying earlier, though. Is how you play video games is a reflection of who you are, how you snob, how you approach things. Even though these are little pieces that make up the entire puzzle, it's still a piece.
Yeah.
And if they have that piece within them that can't provide support when you need it, wouldn't that translate in other areas?
I think people provide support in different areas though, right? So like it's like, I mean, I think like the removing people's process, I mean, yeah, like I definitely feel like there's definitely people that I realize that when I interact with them, I'm not actually playing at where I want to play at in terms of life wise and in perspective. And I think like it's more I'm very conscious and I limit that time, right? Or like I don't spend that time with that person or group of people. And it's but I think it's also like naturally because where your focus goes is, you know, kind of where you're headed, right? So like it's, if your focus is on growing this brand or this business and or what, like your college or whatever it is, then everything around you kind of reformulates around that. You know, it's like it's
That's so true.
It's not really something that you do consciously all the time. So
You're right.
It's like
You're naturally going that direction.
Yeah.
Most of my childhood friends, we still talk. But because of COVID, we haven't seen each other. But they're completely different industries, completely different train of thought than where I moved or gravitated towards. And it's interesting and strange at the same time because we were always like this, right? Where every day we would have some type of dialogue, and now it's gone. Like we've gone months without checking in. But I feel like real friendships, real relationships, even though there's a gap when you two get together, it's like you haven't missed a beat. Like I have a friend that I didn't see for over a year. And then we met up. I mean, this was pre for COVID, and we just met up for dinner and a few drinks, and we just hit it off like we were kids again.
Yeah.
You know, so I don't think, I mean, to those listening, there's any shame.
Yeah.
A lot of people feel like they need to be around their friend all the time, or because that's how they show loyalty and whatnot. Even if it's, if they're moving in a different lane, because people, when you guys become friends, you guys because you guys have the same interest, whether it's sports, video games. But as you grow older, your palette changes. You for the both of you. Some may want to grow this way, others may grow that way. You may have interest in fashion, and the other one may have interest in construction. But at the base of it, you guys are this very similar upbringing. So that's why you guys got along for that moment of time. But you do grow in different directions. But what I am saying is that that's okay. You don't need to talk every day. And then when you guys do, because life happens, you meet a girl, you get married, you get a job, you do whatever, right? And then you have colleagues and you make new friends. You gotta build those relations. You gotta foster that, and you have only so much time in a day. But what's great is to test a real friendship is that when you can give it that space and then come back and like you never missed a beat, you turn. And that's what I love about my friends, that I give it that space, they give it that space. When we come back, we're 15 years old again. You know, we're just kids, and it feels like we're in new bodies, but the inside is the same shit, you know?
You're just kicking it. Yeah, I think for me, it's how to find a balance for all these different type of relationships. I mean, I have my friends that I grew up with, understanding what I'm doing. And then I had multiple girlfriends going through, just trying to understand what I was doing in the creative field. And I went through like 2 different girlfriends. They broke up with me because, you know, they just couldn't take it anymore. They couldn't take the late nights. They couldn't take like, I'm not there all the time.
I remember your ex-girlfriends would give you ultimatums, right?
Oh yeah. Like when I realized like like if there's something that's not working and then we're not trying to work it out, like having a conversation, and it's something important to me. It's something that, you know, it's my dream, and I had conversations with my parents about it, and I'm just like, I'm not hearing my parents. Why would I hear it from you? But it's also like, you know, if we're gonna be partners in this relationship, you have to understand where I'm coming from.
You can't play that power card.
Yeah, you can't give me an ultimatum.
Yeah.
It's this or that. It just didn't register to me that I can live a life with someone like that.
Yeah, I actually purposely choose the opposite. Even if it's going to be at my detriment, like anyone that's ever given me an ultimatum, whether it's in a real, I don't break up with them or leave them. I still let it go, but I'll choose the opposite and let them leave me. I just get so pissed that they would do something like that instead of trying to communicate to me and just do something that selfish. When the ultimatum is, if I'm doing drugs and they're like, Will, seriously, if you don't stop doing drugs, then I can't mess with you anymore.
It's harmful.
Then that's different. I'm not going to do more drugs. Right? But I'm just saying, like, if it's something that's if it's not harmful and it's my dream, it's something that I believe in myself. Like if I'm Alan and I'm dating a girl and she's like, you know, I don't believe in your designer thing. You better stop trying to mess with this and get a real job. Mm-hmm. Boy, you better. I'm triple downing.
Yeah,
I'm triple downing, and I'm gonna work even harder. Like it's gonna fuel me up because it's still energy, right? Mm-hmm. So I look for those things and spaces to create more energy and turn that negative into a positive, because and that's gonna upset me, right? Because it's someone that's close to me. I care about her.
It's hurtful. It stings.
It's hurtful. It really is, and unexpected. Mm-hmm. A lot of the times I'll let you get that close to me, and I shared so much with you, and now you're trying to take something away from me so that you can have more of whatever you think that we need. I just, without having a conversation first, I think that's incredibly self-centered, self-serving, and makes it hard for me to want to go, okay, I'll do what you want and go in that direction. Even if I do choose that person, I would resent them.
Relationships with people wise, I think it's like when it's a expectation of something, then it's like, it tends to be like a really big problem, right? When it's like almost transactional, like, hey, like do this, I get this and stuff like that. And I kind of like really cautious of those things. Like when I feel like it's transactional.
Keeping score. Remember we said?
Yeah, I think if you keep score, it's like probably the worst. That's where you're like, oh man, like you're really in danger.
Look out for those guys who is listening.
Yeah, and I also think like there's nothing necessarily like wrong with like, you know, like what you were saying about like, hey, like I'm going through like 2-3 girlfriends in that time, and I think a part of it is because when you met, like you're kind of like in this crossroad, right? And it's for each other, kind of like this childhood friends moment, and it's like your blueprint or your life plan kind of lines up together, right? It's like this is what's happening now, right? And then it's almost like because of that, those are certain expectations that are lined up with that, and some people adapt to realize like, hey, we're growing and we're not necessarily like the same as when we first met. So those things and cannot be expectations. But so if I feel like if both people are coming with no expectations and they know like this is going to adapt, and like the life plan is like, hey, we're going to be together, but the it may adapt, and you know, then there's something there too. But even on like the friendship side, where if those things are expected, then it can definitely get a little tough, you know, especially with even for myself when it's like coming up and it's like, hey, like I'm like the worst with, for example, like people's birthdays, like literally to the point where I have like my mom's birthday in my phone, you know, like it's like really, really bad. I have to have everybody's birthdays.
I do that.
Yeah, on my phone, or I'm like, oh shit, like I forgot, right? So so like with everything coming up, and it's not like I don't appreciate them, but like some people may take that as like, oh man, like you don't remember my birthday, like but it's almost like everybody's kind of different, right? So like I have like I think like for me, I just don't expect it, and I just look at it like you know, if for example, like I also don't look for like if somebody didn't support exactly what I'm doing, it's just like that's probably not the right fit, because I wouldn't be around that person. Like I wouldn't have put myself in a room most likely to
with someone that'll shoot you down all the time.
Yeah.
or
and-
not support you in your journey.
Yeah. So I think there's that. And I think we also tend to attract like a part of ourselves that we feel like is missing though. So, you know, like I think it's like a part we disowned, right? So like it tends to be like if you're like, let's say working really hard, hustling and like starting up this business, and then you're like, oh man, like I need more chill time or like something, and you kind of like seek after that, right? And you're like, oh, like, and then you actually end up that was what you were seeking and you found it, and then you're like, oh shit, wait, but like I don't need chill time like 4 times a week or like tests all day every day. And but it's like you got into that relationship because you were seeking it, you just didn't know at what level you got it, right? So so I think like just being conscious of like if that's what you got into the relationship for.
I have never met anyone that went with the ultimatum that said, I am happy, I am fulfilled, I am thrilled with life. They say smart people learn from their own experiences, their own mistakes, and wise people learn from others. So you are a wise man. You know, it seems like, you know, and you're smart because you're both. You're learning from your own mistakes, and you certainly do look at other people and say, okay, how do I avoid this, or how do I achieve that? It took me a long time. At 23, I was just out of college and I had no idea what to do, and I just wanted to find any job that's willing to pay me because I needed to make a living.
Yeah. So I will say also like I wasn't necessarily like just born like this too, right? So it wasn't like I just popped out.
You weren't? Oh my gosh.
Like, oh shit, you know. so like it's definitely something that's evolved and through that process, right? Like even when I was starting out, like I like when I was starting the brand, you know, I have memories still to this day where I refuse to eat dollar pizza now. But
why?
Because I used to eat dollar pizza every day. You know,
what's wrong with dollar pizza?
I used to eat dollar pizza every day because it was like, hey, like this is like I have a budget for X amount of clothes I'm going to produce, right? Like samples, things like that in Garment District that I was making. And I was like, man, like I got to eat something. Like I guess a dollar pizza is going to work. So like there's certain things that I did also in terms of like sacrifices or like things like I really was like, okay, like but there's a certain point where it's like, okay, like this is it, you know, like this is like I refuse to ever eat dollar pizza again. And
except for like 2 a.m., 3 a.m. when that's the only thing open.
Yeah. But like the person in me, like even for me, like I actually like when you talk about like EQ and like emotional intelligence, stuff like that, that's something that definitely was developed. It wasn't something that I just was born with. Like it was not a natural gift for me.
That's a muscle.
Yeah,
it's certainly a muscle that you need to work on.
Yeah, so like that muscle like took a lot of nurturing and like people around me, you know, and like that took a lot of like kind of like really being aware that that's something that I need to work on, you know. And I think even for anything, like if somebody's just like, you know, when I was like 15, I was also doing medical malpractice law. So like I was actually like I was offered like an apprenticeship because I was the paralegal for this law firm that was a block from my high school. And I just remember being like, oh fuck, like I don't want to do this, you know, like I'm in this cubicle, like I don't talk to anybody all day, like I just scan this paperwork, file it, put it in affidavits, put in this, and I was like, man, this is sucks. Like I can't believe people grow up to do this.
It's not rewarding work.
Yeah, and you know, and so it was definitely something where it was like, like and you know, I was always like, is this you know, I think of like that kid, like I think about that kid and I think about like, hey, like, is this what I want my life to be like? And even now, you know, I was talking about like, hey, like I was thinking about this recently where it's like, hey, like, what do I want a tombstone to say? You know, like, hey, like if I'm going to live this life, right? Like this tombstone, is it going to say like, I'm just in the office all day, or it's like, and like, oh, like I built this brand and like, that's it. Like, you know, like, or is it going to say like something completely different? Like, hey, like, Alan was loving and caring or generous or like whatever else, like what are the other characteristics I would wanted to say other than, oh, like I built this amazing brand, right? And it just made me really like almost like wake up, right? It made me think about like the other things like beyond just like, hey, the achievement of like where it is, because I just been like go for the past 8 years of my life, you know, and I feel like that's like a secondary thing now. It's like, hey, like there's other things that, you know, like me going snowboarding and skydiving this year was something where it was like, wow, like what other things am I missing out on life? You know, like if, and I think that there's something when people talk about building like resumes, it's almost like, hey, like your life experiences or like what you're doing, like are there things that you dreamed of doing as a kid? Like, you know, like I dreamed of like, oh shit, like I want to fly a plane, you know, like maybe I need to do like take pilot classes or something, right? Or like you know, and all those dreams get forgotten and lost and from the expectations of people around you sometimes. And like you start feeling yourself because that's what you're told. Like, hey, like I got to do this and this is going to get me to school, to work. And so that lost feeling is, you know, it's just your environment, you know, it's just like everything happening around you. So you shouldn't ever feel like this is it. Like this is it and this is just that, and like just listen to this environment and this is going to be your defining moment for what everything, you know, like there's so much more in life to live and to enjoy. And it's like there's, you know, you have one lifetime you're going to remember, right? And it's so strange because for me now, like I'm like, wow, like there's I almost feel like when we started this conversation of the relationship thing, like maybe there was a hey, like let's like push away all these people in a sense and like just focus on this and go. But I'm really starting to feel like, man, like, you know, it's not necessarily like push away these people. Like it's like these are like, you know, like even for me, like my parents and stuff like that, it's like become so important to me because it's like this is a part of my life. This is my lifetime, right? If I only see this, my parents, let's say once a year. For Chinese New Year or something, you know, I have how many years left to live, right? Like, let's say I'm 23 now. I'm going to, average life expectancy is, let's say 80 years old. So I have a little under 60 years to live. I'm going to see them 60 times in my lifetime if I only see them once a year. And I just been really thinking like, wow, like, you know, if you really cherish like these people around you, like, and that's, that's something that actually drove me to fly out to go see my grandma in Fuzhou last year, where I was like, wow, like I barely have seen her, you know, and like, I don't know how many years left she has. And so it's almost like sometimes like, you know, I went through this period where I was like barely picking up my mom's calls, you know, because like, oh, I'm working on this, mom. Like I'm going to call you later.
Don't we all?
Yeah. Right. And I'm like, now, like she calls, and if I'm in something, I'm like, oh, like, yo, I'm calling like 15 minutes. I'm almost done. And I call her right after now. And it's like, because it's just realizing that there's other things around you, and you know, these people have different needs too, and if you care about them, you're going to fulfill, like, you know, you're going to try to fulfill it, especially if you love them, right? Like parents wise, and like other things like the relationships, like girlfriends and wives and stuff like that. And so I feel like it's like a what's really amazing though is like that relationships develop to a point where, right, like you start fulfilling each other's needs, you start meeting each other's needs, right? Like you're like, oh, like this is not like give and take, but you want to go as hard for that person as
Right.
the other person does for you, right?
And that's when it's at its purest,
Yeah.
when it's not transactional, when you're not looking at it like a cost benefit analysis.
Yeah.
You know, and I think it's crazy that some people look at their friendships in that sense, or relationships. They're so quick to cancel someone and try to replace something there, and they're constantly moving through life without any deep, meaningful relationships. Everybody is short term in their life, and that kind of makes sense. And I don't think that's exclusive to this generation, because they did a study. We just had a couple of girls on our podcast last week, and they told us, and they shared with us that one of the top regrets of people, I think were 80 years old or that were close to death in life, was not fostering relationships with their family and friends. And in their old age, they were alone. And there was a deep, heavy regret. Even like either not going more than halfway for their friends, or it was a transactional relationship where they just did a total analysis and they pretty much just outsmarted themselves. Right. So, and that could be really dangerous sometimes when we try to logic everything and we don't listen to our hearts. So I think that's some really powerful stuff there. It's been a great conversation. I wish you the best of luck. And your man Brian there makes a wicked matcha tea. Like, oh man. So shout out to Brian. And Benny, she's a very nice girl, and she also is pursuing her dreams. So, you know, you got the right people around you, it looks like. So thank you. It was very inspiring. I hope people listening can take something out of your story and get inspired and I guess start listening to that inner voice, because you're a great example of what can happen.
Alan, you're a very impressive person. Thank you for sharing your story.
Yeah.
Lucky Boys out.